Yeah. So
There you go.
recording is started. Good. And we can just ad
We can
lib
just,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. No,
Yeah.
because I think if you're looking at it, from the professional advisory firms that are in the region, many of them are also quite international in nature, right? But they're more looking at specific demographics. For example, there are advisory firms that are more after, let's say, European expats or British expats, for that matter. And there's many of that in the Middle East, particularly focusing on, let's say, pension advice or QROPs or many of these.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of
Hmm.
them.
Yeah.
There are,
The burning question on
uh
my mind now is,
yeah,
did you speak to anyone else before you decided to team up with Astra Worldwide?
no. I was looking at the choices. There were supposed to be meetings with other firms. One, I think their domicile was not something that I was happy with, for example. And so I decided not to really pursue that because it even if I think the offering was there, I just did not feel it would fit for me. And so my first meeting was with James. And obviously, I looked at the website. I looked at the people within the team, how internationally, or at least the regions that they're spread in. Plus, I was curious about the Philippine touch point, and because I'm quite embedded in the Filipino community here, that resonated with me. And so after the conversation with James, I feel that one, that's the kind of relationship I wanna propagate, and I think that it's a service that Filipinos at one stage will find valuable. Is the fact that there's a whole Philippine team that's going to be looking out for that. And number two, I think that again, when I was looking at who are the advisors, and Astra does publish that in their webpage, right? And
Yes.
you
Yeah.
see the different types of people there, the breadth of experience that they have, different parts of the region, and that resonated with me. And I mean, I've been away from the Philippines for over 20 years. I've dealt with various different types of advisors in my career. I was on the other side of the fence, as you would imagine. I'm dealing with brokers for the last 20 years in the Middle East, so
Yeah.
familiar with
I
familiar
actually
with
checked your
that.
resume, and
Yeah.
I was like, how does anyone do all of this? What are you? You're a chartered accountant. You're go through the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah. Well, I started as an accountant. So I did my CPA way back, X number of years. But I don't think I was cut out to become an accountant, although I was a CPA. But it became really useful in our field, right? So in our profession as financial advisors, the ability to understand financial statements. You're able to advise businesses from the standpoint of business insurance. You're able to evaluate clients based on their financials. So that was useful for me. Not so much in the audit or something field that I did not really pursue quite a lot, but more in the business advisory. I found that to be the field that I was more into. So my family is in the legal field. My dad's a lawyer. My sisters were lawyers, and
Oh,
so
that's
at
handy.
one point we set up a business and legal consulting firm. So I was doing the business side, and they were doing the legal side, and then the whole family moved out of the Philippines, right? And found my way to the UAE, where I started working for an insurance company. And so um, from there, I started moving on to more of the qualifications around risk and risk advisory, and then the CISI qualification because we're in that field, and looking at the applicability of sustainability and clean energy and all of that. So did all that qualifications. I'm quite a massive supporter of continuing education and continue to campaign about bringing up qualifications to an international standard. So I speak in Filipino organizations around that here in terms of if you want to be competitive in an international setting, then you have to bring your qualifications to an international standard. So you leave the Philippines qualified with Filipino professional qualifications, but then when you want to play in the international arena, you have to bring your qualifications up to international standards. So you keep educating yourself, growing your qualifications abroad. And the entire time that I've been out of the country over the last 20 years, that also opened up a lot of opportunities to network with different businesses, advise different businesses,
Mm.
such that it opens up different opportunities, right? So there's an opportunity for me to represent businesses that want to scale or move here because of the network that I've built. And in the same way, because I've been in and out of Europe over the last 6 years, that also opened up opportunities there. So in the Czech Republic, for example, built a network there. In Germany,
It's
built a network there.
Zapitel Consulting, is it?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yeah. So and
amongst
Zapletal,
many.
and they are the company that has a representation for PPF in the Czech Republic, who owns a majority stake in RTGS. And for me, it's also an important conversation to have when you're looking at enabling countries and banks and businesses to trade in their own currencies, right? So particularly
Yeah,
for overseas workers like us, for Filipinos who send their money back to the Philippines, if you send it through your Qatari Real account, you have to convert that into dollars and then dollars into peso. So how many times does it go through different channels before it hits the market? So if you want to cut that out, so that's why that company resonated with me. So I'm happy to represent them. And so that's the kind of involvement I've had. And
yeah.
then I had an opportunity to be introduced to the Chamber of Commerce in Latvia, who also wanted to be represented in the region. So I accepted their invitation.
Yeah. So
And so that's
are there enough hours in the day?
no. Well,
Ah,
they
yeah.
Darren, my mom, this was my what my mom always said. If you want something done, give it to a busy man.
I like that.
And so I think I might be living that. I've learned that from my mom. And so it's just really compartmentalizing it. But one opportunity always feeds into the other, right? So there's always that relationship, because whenever you network and go around in the community, you will always get a chance to talk about one or the other or both, right? So, for example, campaigning for education opens up a conversation around, I can help you identify where your family could go from an education perspective, but I can also
Yeah.
help you plan for it well in advance. And so this is where I've been doing a lot of education conversations, but I don't have I would say the vehicle for them to prepare for it, because I'm not affiliated with one. And so that's why when that solution I can find through one of the products that Astra has, I felt that it was important to present a more of a whole solution to a family. I'm not just telling you these are good options for your kids to go to study in the future, but how do you get there? Right? And so I can't just say, okay, for you to get there, you need to speak to whoever. If I can provide that same service to them, then they're just talking to one advisor, right? And then you have many of these overseas workers who have invested in properties and accumulated so much investments, but have not planned in terms of succession planning, right?
Yes.
So that's part of the that's why for me it's a whole solution kind of thing now that
The
that
holistic
Astra
view.
became important. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So, what's next? What's next for Greg?
well, I think for me, it's really navigating this through now. It's a beginning of more I think more direct relationship with my community. But again, my community has evolved beyond the Filipino community, right? So I've been embedded so much in Qatar that the network has grown to all the different nationalities. I have relationships with different business councils. I have relationships with different businesses, both Qatari and otherwise, and get invited also into the other countries now because of those relationships, like the UAE or Bahrain, for that matter, or at some touch points, Saudi Arabia. And funny enough, I had a meeting last Saturday. I was introduced to, well, one of my good friends from the UAE who was a banker, setting up an investment fund, and he says, "You know, I've been watching what you're doing, and you can really add value if I take you to India." I was like, "Okay."
Oh, okay.
So
That ties in nicely because the plans are to expand in India.
exactly. And he is quite influential in India. I was telling him, I need access to your central bank. I need access to your bank. He says, I can get you that. And so for me, that's a very, very interesting geography because one massive population, consumer population, and great trajectory in terms of the growth story, right? So there's a lot of affordability among Indian professionals in India now. So much so that it's a really, really good conversation to have in terms of education planning. As you will probably know, many Indian families will always send their kids abroad, and it's important to start them planning early. And I've had two companies talking to me now in India saying we want you to come over and do a lecture series in like major cities in India around studying abroad and how to prepare for it. And I think it ties really well into, okay, this is what we want to do, this is what I want to do, but at the same breath, this is what Astra is trying to do, you know. And
Yes.
so, and I
Yeah.
think that's where for me this was the missing piece in terms of the things that I was doing, because I can do the business advisory or helping a startup scale. I just connect people together, right? um, but I feel that when you're giving a solution to a particular client, you are able to then identify that I'm able to do this, but this and this are also possible. And I think that with what we have in Astra, it ties it all together for me.
Yeah, yeah, and also like thinking outside the box as well.
Yeah,
That's key.
yeah. Because again, when you're looking at it, when I talk about education, people always say, "How do I get there?" And chances are, some of them will talk to me when their kids are in the 11th or the 12th grade, ready to move to university. But you see that they have young kids there, right? And then you will have conversations around how do you protect that, and then you have a life insurance conversation, um, and then you're looking at what have you invested in, and then you have a wills and trust conversation. And so because other than informing them, it will be their problem. Now, where do I find this in this market, right? So, and if you're able to provide that, then you're their go-to person when it comes to many of their, I would say, life journeys. Yeah, and you know, people go through different life
Oh, I
journeys
like
around
that life journey. Yeah,
education, right?
yeah.
So you're planning for education, I'm here. You're looking at retirement, I'm here. You're looking at succession planning, I'm here. And this can be tied together with that. And so you have a business offering, but you also have an offering to clients directly. And this can work irrespective of which nationality you're talking to.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so we touched on your resume, and the title of the podcast is Astra Worldwide Attracts
Yeah.
Top Talent. Say no more. Here's Greg.